Hi everyone. Nice to be back. Very kind of you, Alvaro, to introduce me as a very popular. I'm not clear. I'm always the popular voice. I seem to bring kind of doom and gloom, unfortunately, at the moment. So what I'd like to do this morning is just give an update as to where we are with the latest COVID situations, then perhaps talk through some of the implications, what some of the next steps might be, if that's okay. I'm just going to try and share my screen for a second to give, if this works, to give everybody the latest data. So hopefully this is going to pop up now. Alvaro, if you could indicate if that's come up okay.
Yeah, we can see everything, yeah.
Lovely, thank you very much. So in effect, we've seen a really rapid increase in the number of positive COVID cases in Liverpool over the last 2 weeks, really. Back in July, the number of cases we were getting was around 14 a week. We do it on a rolling 7-day basis. So around 14 cases a week. To the point where yesterday, actually, we had 530 on a rolling 7-day basis. So that is a big increase, and you can see that from the bar chart at the top of the screen, the big increase in the number of cases. That is concerning, not just because of the number of cases, but also because of the rapid increase, so the change back to how quickly this has come up. Now, obviously, we've been working with partners across the city, including the Visitor Economy Network, right the way through the pandemic to give information, advice and support about how businesses should be operating as safely as possible through this in order to prepare actually for the situation that we now find ourselves in. But I should say right at the start that this is a pretty serious situation now, and this works out as at a rate level. So you work out what your rate per 100,000 is, and our rate now is just under 107 per 100,000. Government operates to thresholds, so and that those thresholds define kind of like what level of intervention or otherwise you're getting. So when we were at around 14 cases a week, our rate was under 10 per 100,000, if you can follow that. Government's thresholds are roughly, if you're between 30 and 50, so between a rate of 30 and 50 per 100,000, you're an area of interest. If you're between 50 and 70, you're an area of concern. If you're a rate of between 70 and 100, you're an area of enhanced support. And if you're above 100, you're an area of intervention. Now, we became an area of concern last week, not just Liverpool, Merseyside as a whole, because the pattern we are seeing in Liverpool is replicated across the whole of Merseyside. In fact, it's replicated across the whole of the Northwest, and as you may well see from another part of the country this morning, also across the Northeast. So a very quick increase that meant we were put onto area of concern at the end of last week, but actually our level of rate is at an intervention level, and that's how serious this is. In terms of the patterns of infection, this is positive cases are right the way across the whole city. So we had an outbreak in Prince's Park earlier in the year, just at the end of July, start of August, and that was really quite restricted to one geographical location, to one area, and a particular type of outbreak. That's not this. This is a large number of cases right the way across the city. And if you think about demographics, certainly last week, around 60% of the cases were in under 40-year-olds. Actually, we have started now to see that spread into wider age groups, including older age groups, which is where your concern really steps in. So one of the things we get all the time is, well, it doesn't really matter if it's in younger age groups, because younger people don't die from COVID. And of course, largely that is absolutely true. Older people and more vulnerable groups are the ones that tend to die as a result of COVID. And we had over 570 people very sadly die in Liverpool as a result of COVID. So, this is a serious illness, but it affects certain people more than it affects others. The issue about it only being in younger age groups is it doesn't stay in younger age groups. Younger age groups might be the ones that are out and about mixing more and enabling the virus to spread, but then they take it home into their households, into their families, into their loved ones, which aren't all the same age people. And that's when you then start to see hospital admissions increasing and very sadly deaths increasing as well. So sometimes it's difficult to get that point across, that it isn't the counter narrative is this isn't important, but actually it is incredibly important, because the previous peak of pandemic showed that that's exactly what happened. The infection got into our vulnerable groups, if you like, our older people, our care homes, our more vulnerable people with long-term conditions, and then you start to see rapid increases in hospital admissions and rapid increases in deaths. There might be a question in there about why do we care, and it's a very strange one for me to hear that question, but we do get it. Why does that matter? These people might have died soon anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Well, of course, that's not how society works, does it? We all have a responsibility to look after everybody, and even if we are seeing it perhaps through a slightly more selfish lens, that as an individual it's not going to affect me, so I'll be okay, the impact of hospitalizations and deaths on society is big, and it will affect routine medical health care, routine public sector services. So, I'm sure I don't need to make the case, but if I did need to make the case, this is important for all of us because of the implications of COVID on the whole of our city, the whole of Merseyside, and the whole of the country. So right now I'm concerned about where we are. We are in discussions with government about what the next steps are, and we are expecting a series of measures to be announced tomorrow. The North East is just in the process of announcing their measures right now, and I don't know what measures will be announced for us tomorrow. I have not got that information. I might find out later today, but right now I don't know that information, and that will come out tomorrow. But I would expect whatever happens to be in line with what is being announced in the Northeast. For broader context, the rates of infection we're seeing in the Northwest are higher than the rates that we're seeing in the Northeast. So the fact that Northeast is doing something makes me think it's highly suggestive that whatever the Northeast is doing, the Northwest will follow. And then the final point here is, so even though this is bad, it isn't all doom and gloom, because the point about this is trying to control the infection, trying to control the virus at as early stage as possible to keep us all safe and to keep our city safe, to keep our businesses safe, to keep our economy safe. This isn't either or. This isn't keep health safe and ruin the economy. It's because if we haven't got health and well-being, we haven't got people out and about, we haven't got a local economy. So it's important we do that for everybody. And from a preventative perspective, the sooner we take the necessary steps to pull the level of infection down, the sooner we'll be out of this, and the sooner we will get back to whatever normal looks like post-pandemic. So this isn't really something we can put off. The sooner we do it, the bigger chance we have of getting on top of it and returning life to whatever normal looks like. And just a reflection about the first wave of the pandemic, a lot of the criticism the government got was, although it was very last minute, we were about a week or 10 days late into that lockdown. And if we'd gone into that national lockdown earlier, potentially we would have come out of it sooner. So the sooner and harder you go in, the easier it is to come out in some senses. I guess just to kind of try and pull that together into something and to give a bit more clarity, and I'm happy to take any questions. This is what's going to happen isn't national lockdown Mark II. It isn't that. Whatever will happen won't be as strong as that, but it will be. I'm certain there will be measures, and those measures are likely to be things like no inter-household mixing. So people outside your household, your social bubble, should not be mixing. That's close contact mixing with others in your house or outside of the house. That doesn't mean that no one's ever allowed out. So people will still go to school and still go to work, and there may well still be shops and businesses open. I'm certain they will be, but it's about the mixing part, the close proximity part that's so important. Other types of restrictions we may get are things around our most vulnerable groups, so care homes, so whether care homes have to take extra precautions to protect them. And what we've seen in the Northeast, and we've seen in Bolton as well, which is much more close to home, is restrictions on operating hours of certain businesses, so the hours at which alcohol can be served or food can be served, potentially a drive to more takeaway type style businesses rather than having people indoors, because clearly the more people are indoors, the higher the risk is. So outdoor spaces, well ventilated spaces are safer. And then finally, and I know this is the next part of the panel discussion, there might be something around sport and cultural activity. So the government has gradually been increasing the amount of sport and cultural activity that's been allowed to happen, especially that with audience participation in there. I'm expecting that the crowds bit probably won't be allowed locally, certainly for the immediate future. I'd like to very quickly touch on face coverings, if I may, and I noticed that was one of the questions in the Q&A. So with when you respond to something like a pandemic, it isn't one single measure that's going to solve all of this. So we are all desperately hoping for some magical solution at the end of this. And I noticed that in America overnight there was conversation from the Communicable Disease Centre around we might be getting a vaccine towards the end of 2021, and the president came back and said, actually, I'm expecting it sooner than that, probably before the end of this year. The truth will probably be in the middle of those two things. I don't think we'll be getting a vaccine anytime soon. In the meantime, there's a range of measures that we all can take to mitigate the risk of the virus and allow us to live our lives as normally as possible in that meantime. So face coverings is one of those. It's not an answer in itself, and clearly the way that we are guaranteed not to get the virus personally is by not being close to somebody who does have the virus. So social distance is incredibly important. But in areas where you're not able to socially distance, so going into businesses, going into shops, bars, restaurants, in close proximity, then that's where face coverings become a really important part of the solution. So not by themselves, but as part of a range of other things. And I think I know that particularly in the business community, there's challenges around face coverings. They're not mandatory. There are exemptions, and it is difficult for businesses to confront that issue about why aren't you wearing a face covering. My suggestion, though, is that actually you should all be pushing very strongly on the use of face coverings wherever possible, because this isn't just about individual behavior, it's about the health of the business, and it's about the health of your staff. And if I may just end on staff, on employees. Employees are a really important part of this as well. So we have to model good behavior. So whatever I'm telling people that they need to do, I need to be doing as well. And I think as businesses, it's very much the same space. If we want people to behave in a particular way when they're in our business, in our shop, in our bar, in our restaurant, in our event, then we need our staff to be behaving exactly the same way. And there are challenges around that, because sometimes our staff behave one way when they're in work, but when they leave, they can, as we all do, go off and do whatever we want to in our social life. And of course, that is it's not helpful to the overall solution. So a couple of challenges, a couple of questions, I guess, to conclude on, and then Alvaro, happy to take any of the questions from the Q&A. So how, based on the information I've given you, how do businesses prepare to be COVID safe, both in the short term and the long term? Because I don't think this is going away anytime soon, but hopefully we'll be able to push the numbers back down in the short term, but we'll still have a situation where we are living with COVID rather than getting over COVID. So what do businesses do in both the short term and the long term to just accept that that's a reality and respond in order to make their businesses as safe as possible? And then what role do we as individuals and our staff have in our communities in reinforcing some of those key messages? I'll pause there, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks for that, Matt. Obviously, very important messages and very timely at this moment. So it's why we felt that it was originally we slated only 10 minutes for this section, but really it's very important to continue it. I think a number of these questions you have picked up on. So how much notice will be given into local lockdown? Well, you've picked up on that in terms of the fact, or do you want to just go through that?
So I don't think we'll have a national lockdown. I think we'll have some kind of local enhanced measures. I'm expecting those to be announced tomorrow, but I can't say for certain what time it will be. And I also don't know exactly what they are. And also we'll have to work through them at pace. But I think, one of the first questions was, does this mean we're going to have to get rid of all of our perishable goods? I don't think it's quite that, but I do think everybody needs to be aware that there will be some measures announced tomorrow, or highly likely to be some measures announced tomorrow, that we will have to respond to quickly.
And those measures will also include the Wirral. So there'll be a city region message or a city message?
No, it won't just be Liverpool. I'm expecting them to be on a minimum of a Merseyside basis, but maybe wider because the Northwest is all in a very similar position.
Okay. And then there are a number of questions around the wearing of face coverings, which you picked on in detail there. And I think one of the things, yes, we understand that in a retail environment, it is mandatory and has been since July, but clearly it's very difficult to enforce. Just to say that there will be a number of initiatives about how we get that message out and strengthen the message, and how we provide support for retailers into that environment. This is about the message, and we've seen some soft and gentle messaging coming out about how it's in everybody's interest to do their bit for the communal bit, but this is going to be, those messages are going to be ramped up. And the one thing I will also say for everybody listening to this is that it's very important to go to the right sources of information. So if you want the up-to-the-minute absolute information, then the best place, of course, is Matt's Twitter feed, because that, of course, is the very important, but also the City Council information that's coming out, and also the visitor economy information that we supply through Marketing Liverpool and through the BID is information that's real and valid and timely. So focus on those sources of information, and don't really follow what other people may put on a WhatsApp group or via various Twitter feeds. As we've said, I think that really does cover most of those. There was just one question about hospitalisation and mortality rates.
Yeah, and I can answer that now. I can't be too specific about the data, but I think at the peak of the pandemic, obviously there was a lot of beds filled with COVID-19 patients, and some of those patients were very seriously ill and obviously resulted in death, so that you get some quite intense treatments. Since then, so that number went up very quickly at the start, and it's been coming down slowly ever since. So up to around 3 weeks ago, that number was quite low, but those numbers have now started to increase. And what I've seen from my data, and obviously I'm not the best source for individual organisations' data, but the data that I've seen around hospitalisations is in the last 2 weeks, the number of hospital admissions has multiplied by a factor of 4. Now, that is from a low base, but it has multiplied by a factor of 4. So in effect, we are seeing increases in hospitalisations as a result of COVID and beds being filled with COVID-19 now. Other parts of the country, so in fact, Tameside has got a real specific issue around hospitalisation right now. There's always a lag factor. So as I said, at the moment, the virus has mainly been in younger age groups who won't go into hospital, but the more they pass it on to other people, those hospitalisations will start to increase, and then deaths will start to increase as a lag factor to all of that.
Great, thanks for that, Matt. So if anybody else has any further questions, then please do come back either to ourselves via the BID, info at BID, or indeed to the City Council, Public Health.
But Bill, I'm sorry, I'm just picking up on Nikki Yates' question right at the bottom, and if I may, just to respond to that one. So listen, lockdown is horrible. National lockdown was a horrible experience for all of us, wasn't it? And there were adverse effects and implications as a result of that on all of us, on business, but on health and well-being. And so throughout all of this, we also have to work out how we all stay fit and healthy, and how inequalities don't get made worse, in effect. And so there is absolutely a role for physical activity, for healthy eating, and for well-being type activities to get us through this. So Nikki's question is there a role there? There really is. The issue is working out how we do it in a COVID-safe way. And I think that's the same as the business challenge. I don't want the city to grind to a halt. I want the city to continue, but do things in a different way that allows us to keep the residents of the city safe and keep the economy of the city safe.
Thanks for that, Matt. I hope people will appreciate that we have extended that section longer than we really anticipated initially, but when we booked this webinar back in July, we really didn't anticipate that we would be in this situation. So thank you for that. And I know that if people have to go, we will go on past 1 o'clock. But initially, I thought it's worth us carry on with that. So if you can move to our, thank you for that, Matt. If we can leave you to keep up your good work, and we wish you Godspeed in all that you do. If we can move now to our first panel. which is the panel when we wanted to look at how the impact of COVID on, particularly on the cultural section, on our sports section, and also on the major international business tourism. So we've got Bob Prattey, whose video is there, but Bob is with us, I know that. Richard and Sue Finnegan. Richard, if I can come to you first, because I know you've also got to go from we know that you are obviously the Director of Marketing at Everton Football Club. Those if you look in my background, you might notice my allegiance, but also the Director responsible for Everton in the community. So you have had a considerable workload over these last 6 months since COVID. Obviously, switching from a model where you've had 50 or 40,000 spectators in a stadium on a match-by-match basis to a switch off. What's the current position? We know clearly on the field things are starting to go right for Everton, but what about off the field and stadiums?
Yeah, I think we should swap home offices, Bill, shouldn't we? Looking at your background, I think I like the room that you're sitting in there. But yeah, I think it's been a challenging period for the football club and for Everton, the community, as it has been for everybody. Obviously, that goes without saying. And I think it is good that we got football back up and running, and good that the season's this season's running again. Good that we could finish last season. And I think the level of detail, attention, care, and process that all the teams in the Premier League and the league itself put in to make that happen was absolutely enormous. So, it is a different experience without fans in stadia, and obviously we're keen to have them back in as soon as we can. But I think it's important that we continue to work within the guidelines, obviously from the government and the league, and very interesting to hear Matt's perspective on where things are currently. And I think from our point of view as a club and as a charity, the safety of colleagues, safety of supporters, safety of our community has always come first, and obviously we'll continue to do that. And we appreciate that we've got a role in, amplifying public health messages locally, nationally, internationally, and we've been doing that throughout this period. We've also had tough decisions to make, and around our business, and we've always tried to do things the right way. We've kept staff employed and paid, and match day casuals and all that kind of thing. Kept all that sustained, and refunded season tickets and all that kind of thing. But I do think it's important not to mention, obviously, the focus is always around the first team and everything that goes with it. But it's not just that part of our performance structure that's been affected. Obviously, our women's team, the Women's Super League campaign was ended early last year. All the young players in our academy had their seasons disrupted and their development disrupted at obviously key times in their development and their journey. So a big impact beyond just the first team, but and in similar ways, really, it is the club is so much more than just the performance side of it. There's a whole ecosystem that exists around the football club. So we've got Everton in the community that I'm privileged to run, and again, that is a charity that's supporting tens of thousands of vulnerable people every year. And so we've had to very quickly, going back into March, we had to very quickly adapt the kind of support that we could give, obviously doing it virtually, and trying to maintain the level of support and care that we could give to those people across 40 plus different programs. And some of those interventions are, like life-changing, but life-saving. So really, really important that our team stepped up and continued to support those people. And again, by the nature of the work that we do, a lot of those people were in the work that we do is around, social isolation, and people in our community who don't have that support around them. And, we've all had that social isolation to deal with in a different way, but, some very vulnerable members of our community that we've had to step up and support. And have brilliant support from the football club to do that, brilliant support from partners across the city, and brilliant support from our fan base as well, who donated in the hundreds of thousands, I mean, hundreds of thousands of pounds, £500,000 worth of donations from season ticket holders alone to help support those who really needed it in the community. So, and obviously in that ecosystem, in our community as well, there is an impact on the hospitality sector, and not just, you know, the hotels in the city centre and the bars and restaurants right in the city centre, but also the community around us in L4, you know, the bars, the food outlets. I know there's been some support centrally from government on that, but obviously it's still been a challenging time without the influx of supporters every other Saturday for now, you know, obviously quite a long time. So it has been really challenging, and those challenges are obviously continuing, but as a club, we're doing our best to get through it and get through it together, and continue to across the city region to do that. And I think you know, there are reasons though for us to be optimistic about the future. Again, as Matt said, you know, in the short term, it doesn't look like we'll be having fans back in the stadium, but that will happen at some point, and we really look forward to that, obviously. On the pitch, we've had a good start. You know, we've got one of the best managers in the world, and an improved squad from last season, and, you know, 2 wins. So we're off to a good start. No goals conceded. Our work in the community has continued, and actually through this crisis has come some opportunity. We've established new partnerships that are going to really stand us in good stead and be able to help more people in greater ways moving forward. And some of these organisations that we've met and we've been dealing with now, you know, we wouldn't have done without this issue. And again, you know, it's sad that you know, there's going to be more for us to deal with, but we are set up to be able to do that. And again, Matt mentioned it there, you know, or one of the questions that Matt addressed was about sort of physical activity. And, you know, we have plans already now to, when we come out of this at Everton in the community, to be able to do more programs for more people, and that will be really important. And again, around mental health, which obviously there's been, you know, an increase, and likely to be a continuing increase in some challenges around mental health. The charity and the club have been able to step up, and as part of our response to COVID, we've had planning permission granted for a mental health facility right next to Goodison, so that will form part of our response. But also looking beyond this immediate, you know, period in the next few months, there's great opportunity for the club and for the city, of course, through our new stadium, which is continuing to progress. And some aspects of that project have slowed a little bit through COVID, but not with the material impact to the scheme. So, I mean, I know everyone, I'm sure everyone on the call will know that we see this as a great opportunity, not just for Everton Football Club, but for the city region. The amount of new jobs through the construction phase, the immense supply chain opportunities, obviously the increased capacity at the stadium, which will bring more visitors on a match day, but also the opportunity for us to do more stuff on a non-match day that will have an impact for the visitor economy. And it will be a major infrastructure project, you know, nationally. And, you know, we know what the government have said about build, and our build back better locally. You know, this scheme fits all of that perfectly, and, you know, would have been hugely beneficial for the city region before COVID, and I think it's even more so post-COVID. The social economic benefits make it a game changer for the city, and obviously from a visitor economy perspective,
I think
we have optimism to move forward when we can.
Great. Thanks, Rich. So the message from both football clubs, but particularly obviously at the moment, is that investment is still continuing into the clubs, and fans sadly enjoy watching and be patient. And at some stage in the future, when the time is right, then we will be back.
Yeah, that's right, and it's obviously, you know, it is a different experience altogether, seeing stadiums without fans in it. But, you know, really, really important, and I know all the relevant authorities are working through it really carefully to make sure that when fans are reintroduced, it's at the right time, and it's absolutely safe for them to do so. And you know, we all really look forward to that, don't we? I mean, you know, Bill, you're there all the time, usually at Goodison. You know how important it is in people's lives, and it will be tremendous when we're back in a safe environment to enjoy football the way we all love it. So we look forward to that. And I don't think Everton Football Club has ever taken our supporters for granted. I certainly hope we haven't. But I think, across the whole game, this is, underlined the importance of fans, the fans that go to games, and what an important part of, they are the game, aren't they? So we look forward to having them back when it's safe. Thanks,
Richard, and thank you for that. Obviously, we'll keep in touch as soon as we're able to. But as I said, we'll watch through our television screens at this moment in time and be patient. But we look forward to that day when we can come back.
Yeah.
Well, Bob, if I can turn to you as you're CEO of the whole of the campus, the ACC, the Convention Centre and ECL. Clearly, you've not had any business through your doors since lockdown, so 6 months since you've been able to operate in any way at all. How are things for you? And obviously, I can imagine, as we know, we've spoken regularly, very bleak at this moment in time until you can get business operating.
Yeah, real challenge. Good afternoon, everyone. As you say, we've had no business through the doors for the last 25 weeks or so. The impact on us is £11 million lost revenue, but more importantly, it's lost revenue to the city through economic impact, probably touching £100 million, which would have come through hotels, restaurants, bars, that has been lost permanently to the city. We are today expecting an announcement from the DCMS about our ability to kind of begin recovery from the 1st of October. But everything we're hearing on the development of COVID is not good news. So we may have faced a delay on that. In terms of the rest of the current calendar year, we have very little events coming through. Certainly in terms of concerts and sporting events, nothing is likely to happen until spring, middle of next year. Conferences program has been devastated. We should be at the moment getting ready for the Labour Party conference, which we've managed to attract to Liverpool for a couple of years. Massive amount of delegates, 10,000 delegates, £90 million worth of economic impact, hotels full, news coverage from Liverpool going around the world. So a major blow that to the Liverpool City region. In terms of exhibitions, we are going to try and do a couple of exhibitions before the end of the current calendar year. So we've got a car show coming through, and what we all need to go to, I think, is the gin to my tonic show. I think we could all do with a gin and tonic in the current climate. But without all joking apart, it's really difficult. We're having to cut our costs clearly as much as we can. We've had redundancies, cost-cutting operations to try and secure our future to keep the business running, because obviously we need to be ready for the recovery when it comes so we can hit the ground running. Some of our clients are having a crisis of confidence in terms of whether they should do events, whether people will turn up for events. So we need to work behind the scenes, and that's a lot of work we're doing with Chris and Marketing Liverpool, really to build people's confidence in the recovery and the return so that we can hit the ground running. Looking to the future, clearly a lot of the events that we've had cancelled or postponed have moved into next year, into the next financial year. So if there's any abatement in COVID, then clearly we can hit the ground running and potentially have a good year next year. But at the moment, it's really difficult for everyone to maintain optimism in the current climate. We've heard from Matt this morning that we may have some further announcements on a local basis, which is going to hit confidence going forward. But we just have to keep going. Hate the phrase, but it is what it is. We are faced with it. We need to work closely with everyone, and I think that's one of the benefits of what's happened. That organisations and bodies and companies in Liverpool are now working probably more collectively than I can recall. And when the COVID comes to diminish and we're able to start again, we're going to have a very busy order book, hopefully, because one of the challenges, one of the reasons we're here is to actually stimulate economic impact, to stimulate business, not just for ourselves, but for the visitor economy. And I'm hearing a lot of worrying concerns now from one or two of the hotels that have come into Liverpool because of the business we've been attracting, saying that, you know, without the business coming through in the short term, that they're facing viability issues. And that's the last thing we need, is for hotel closures to be a consequence of COVID. So all in all, a really challenging position for us. But we are ready to go as soon as we get the okay from DCMS and from the medical authorities. And hopefully many of our clients will stick with us, and we can start doing what we do best, and that's bringing business into Liverpool to stimulate the visitor economy.
Thanks, Bob. So in terms of support for yourselves, I mean, government came out very quickly with the furlough scheme, but we know is ending in almost 5 weeks' time. They came out with grant support, but in terms of for major businesses like yourselves, there's been no support?
No support at the moment. We are exploring every opportunity we can, Bill, as you'll be aware, with the City Council, our owners, and with Marketing Liverpool, exploring. We put a major bid into the Arts Council England in terms of the support for the arena and the concert programme and the event programme that happens in there. We've got various other bids going forward for help. Furlough was a godsend. I think we'd have been a really difficult position without furlough. I've got something like 120 staff on furlough at the moment. They're on flexible furlough, but obviously, as you articulate, furlough's coming to an end. So we face a major challenge there. And, you know, regretfully, we may face further redundancies depending on the timescale of the recovery when we can kick into action again.
Okay, thanks, Bob. If I can just say, generally, we're looking to extend our panel until 1:15 today because of the extension that we left for Matt. So if everybody, I hope, is able to stay with us till 1:15, we pick up any questions. Can I just also point to Richard? I know you have to leave. There is a specific question, Richard, if you can answer it. And I think you did answer it, but which was really about, are the plans for the new stadium affected during COVID? You mentioned the fact that there has been some delay in that, but
yeah,
clearly,
I mean, some parts of it just you know, moved a little bit slower just because things were moving slower, more, you know, generally across all aspects of life for a little period. But no, the ultimate plans for the new stadium remain unaffected. You know, we're working to the same project plan. We submitted which has been done. So you know, no particular COVID impact, if you like, on the stadium project. No, and as I said earlier, I think, you know, we know the need for the stadium for Everton Football Club. We also know the benefits for the city region, and I think, again, those, you know, the north end of the city particularly needed all the things that this new stadium and the associated developments would bring. I think they need it more than ever now. So, you know, if anything, I think, you know, the case for it for the city is stronger than ever before. But no, it's exactly our intention, and our timelines are not affected by COVID specifically.
Thanks for that, Richard. And if you do need to leave us now, that's great. Thanks for being with us and for that insight.
Thank you.
Sue, business tourism and events. So we've talked to Bob just then about what's happening to the ACL and the ECL, but one of the important festivals that was coming to Liverpool was the Good Business Festival. We know we had the International Festival of Business over many years, and the Good Business Festival is coming to Liverpool, but it's coming to Liverpool not in the way that we had planned. So tell us, how is the Good Business Festival coming? How do we get involved in that?
Well, I'm joining this webinar with some really positive news for a start. The Good Business Festival is set to be the global go-to festival on the subject matter of good business. As you know, my role as Commercial Director is all about attracting, bidding for and producing the biggest events which will attract the eyes of the world and the media on Liverpool. But it's also about bringing the world's biggest brands to the city and aligning them with the global brand of Liverpool, and also capitalising on the equity of those brands to support and grow our destination positioning. I think as a region, we recognise that the world is demanding change as more and more people get switched to the idea of conscious capitalism and purposeful business. And that's everything from social value to the balance of purpose over profit. But our world, as we're seeing now, is absolutely in an extraordinary state of flux, where political, social and cultural change are happening at a faster rate than any other time in history. And we see this with the rise of great female leaders such as Jacinda Ardern, the rise of the B Corp movement with the Innocents and Patagonias. And one thing that isn't predictable in a very unpredictable climate at the minute is that consumers, employees and legislators are now demanding social purpose and authenticity. And so we have teamed up with Wayne Hemingway, who at Culture Liverpool, we worked with him in 2015. And we are delivering the Good Business Festival, and it will be a festival of profile, scale and ambition, and delivered in a very COVID-friendly, safe way. It will redefine business events as we know them. And if you think of a mix of South by Southwest in Texas, meets Boiler Room, meets TEDx, meets Davos without the private jets and the pomp and ceremony, if you like. And what makes this unique is it is curated by creatives. So creatives working with big business. It will be immersive, it will be exciting, it will be relevant, and it will be culturally executed as well. And one thing that I know from speaking to a lot of the content partners and also the global brands that we're working with is that we have absolutely hit the zeitgeist. And you know, given what's happening in the world at the moment with the global pandemic, it is ever more relevant. It will become a forum, or it will be a forum for world leaders, creatives, economists, physicians. We're working with the Royal College of Physicians, entrepreneurs and innovators, alongside the biggest global business talent, both regionally, nationally and internationally. The biggest brand giants I'm working with, and I can't say who they are at the minute because we're just going through negotiation stages, but some of the biggest beauty brands in the world, biggest tech brands in the world. And I'll just give you a little snapshot of some of the talent that we've got coming to the festival. Massive Attack. We have Anne Kearns, the Vice President of MasterCard. They're one of our partners. Richard Curtis. We have John Sovan from Greenpeace. Liz Lowe, Head of Sustainability for Coca-Cola. So note that this isn't a festival that we're not going to be preachy. This is a festival for the big global corporate giants like the Coca-Colas and the BPs, right the way through to the B Corps. Lawrence Delalio. We have Mariam Jean, who is one of our ambassadors and founder of I Am the Code, teaching 1 million young women and girls how to code by 2030 in line with the SDGs. We have Douglas Lamont, Chief Exec of Innocent, and we have Tim Smith, CEO of the Eden Project, alongside a string of young activists such as Camden Youth MP Athian Akek. And for us, it's really going to validate the UK and LCR as an ambitious, forward-thinking, engaged global leader in emerging industries. So our ambitions are big. They are, you know, they haven't scaled down in light of COVID, albeit we have changed the model of the festival.
Yes, I was waiting for the call. You're on mute. So how are we? How do we locally engage with? So what will it mean for us?
Okay, I mean, there's so many different ways. Obviously, there's so much I want to tell you, but I know we're really short on time. But for local businesses, hotels, bars, restaurants, visitor attractions, the model will be a one-day digital festival on the 8th of October, where we'll have 3 digital channels, a centre stage, good thinking and open source. That's free to attend, it's free ticketed. But come the 2nd to the 4th of March next year, it will be an immersive, multi-venue, large-scale festival across the city region. And this is really our sort of comeback festival. We want to showcase the best of the city. So if you're an independent, we want to hear from you. We want to make sure our city is that showcase and that stage for when 10,000 visitors descend on Liverpool City region in a COVID-friendly and safe way.
Great. So there is one port of call that everybody can go to now to get information that we can share out.
Yes,
So,
I'll send all of that through. So it's thegoodbusinessfestival.com to get your free tickets for Act 1 in October. And then we'll soon be releasing the paid for but inclusive tickets for March next year in the next couple of weeks.
excellent. So we look forward by March to be able to do that within physical environments, although socially distanced.
Yeah.
Let's look forward to that. So it's great to end on a note of positivity. Thanks for that. Alvaro's just shared the link to everybody. So I think if I can just pass across to Chris for our next section. Apologies that was trying to push along now, but thanks for that.
Thanks very much, Bill. And yeah, some fascinating conversation so far. I'm sure we'll continue that conversation now with Tim and Kellie. So, Tim, I'm going to come to you first because the University of Liverpool, so important to the city in many ways, not only through the brilliant work you do academically, but clearly also through the large number of students that you bring to the city, both domestic and international, and the impact that has on the city's economy in so many ways, particularly the visitors economy. So can you give us a sort of update as to where you think things are at the moment for the university in terms of welcoming students back and some of the issues and challenges around that with COVID, as we've discussed earlier? I think a lot of our listeners will be really keen to know your kind of thoughts and the university's thoughts on that.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Chris. So ever since March, when we moved to remote learning very quickly in the light of what was unfolding, we've begun looking towards the new academic year, which usually starts in September. There's been a little bit of a change to our timescales, which perhaps I'll come back to. But over the last few months, we've been really busy working towards getting our students and the staff who need to be on site to support and teach those students back in a safe environment. And obviously, in broad terms, that's what we're going to do. And students are beginning to arrive, many are already here now, and you'll see numbers continue to increase over the next few weeks. In terms of what they're going to get, the model of teaching has been adapted to reflect a COVID secure environment. So we're having what we describe as a hybrid model, and this is what most universities across the country are doing now, by the way, and for the foreseeable. So that means that face-to-face teaching will take place. Everybody will get some face-to-face teaching for as long as things stay as they are, but that will only be where we can do it in a appropriately safe manner. So in socially distanced rooms, small groups, and where they need to use specialist equipment, labs, and our medics, and so on. Large lectures will happen in a different virtual environment, and some of that will be live, some will be recorded. So students are going to have a different experience, but an experience that requires them to be here in Liverpool for that face-to-face element. We've done all sorts of things, but I'm sure everybody on the call is familiar with the kind of measures that you introduce to make a place as secure as possible in the current circumstances. It's probably worth saying a couple of things about it, though. We've decided to make wearing face coverings mandatory on campus in pretty much every indoor environment, with few exceptions, and outdoors as well in crowded places. So we're supplying students and colleagues with washable face coverings, and we're very much expecting those to be used, or people to use their own, of course. We've also got a testing facility on site so that we can very closely complement the NHS provision on testing, but very closely monitor what's happening in terms of any outbreaks, any cases amongst our university community, because we really want to be able to nip that in the bud where it happens and help to contain the virus in the city, starting within our own community. So I mentioned dates are changing. Usually you'd expect to see a lot more of our students in Liverpool now at this time of year. However, things have changed. That might be relevant to some people on the conference. So our start date by which most students need to be here is the 5th of October. We've got a foundation week, and that week, and then the full teaching timetable starts the following week. Some students have already started, our medics, for example, trainee doctors, so they're already in town and doing their thing. But other students will be starting to arrive. Some of them have to self-isolate for two weeks. As you mentioned, we have a lot of students from overseas, and in most cases they have to do that 14-day self-isolation under the current rules. Our welcome week is the one before the 5th of October, so 28th of September I think is the start date for that. But again, most of those kinds of activities will be online. In terms of the implications of the pandemic for our student numbers, I think the headline is it has made a difference, but not a very significant one in terms of the overall figures. We won't know our overall student numbers until several months' time, and we never do. But we do keep a very, very close eye on that data. So in broad terms, just to describe what's happened, we've seen the pandemic have a negative impact on the willingness of students from overseas to come to the UK. Obviously, it's not specific to Liverpool or to our university, but you can understand in the current climate why there may be a degree of nervousness about that. Our insight suggests it's more likely to be parents than the students themselves who don't want to come, but our data is telling us that we will see fewer new students from overseas. On the other hand, we'll actually have more students from the UK this year for two reasons. The changes around A-level results meant that we had achieved our planned numbers in the week of the first set of A-level results. And then in light of the changes, we reinstated offers to several hundred more students who then subsequently accepted a place with us. So actually we have more UK-based undergraduates with us this year. And we also have more UK-based postgraduate taught students, and that's something that may be of interest because we recognise from previous data on people's decisions around higher education in the context of a recession, that postgraduate study is often seen as a safe haven, and you can imagine away from a challenging jobs market. So we specifically made it a little bit easier for our class of 2020, our undergraduate students who graduated over the summer, to move into postgraduate study with us if they wish to do so, to smooth out the process for them, and ran a campaign to increase uptake of postgraduate study from across the UK. So we've seen a real increase in numbers there as well. So an increase in UK-based students, a bit of a decrease in overseas students probably, but it all balances out. Our overall student contingent is about 28,000 people, and any change I would estimate at this stage will be certainly in the hundreds rather than the thousands. So it's a very substantial community that will be coming back to Liverpool.
Okay, I mean, I think it's in. I mean, I just going back to what Bob was saying earlier. I think we cannot underestimate, certainly through the Club Liverpool Ambassador Programme that we operate, the importance of the university in bringing international conferences to the city is many millions of pounds in terms of that international reach that the university has. And we're looking at, we do a lot of work with you on that program, and we look forward to continuing to build that. But just going back to, you were saying that this sort of mix between the domestic and the international, I mean, clearly the growth of international students, particularly those coming from China over the last few years, has also provided a great backdrop to the city to develop economic and other relations with China off the back of students coming to the city. I mean, do you foresee that the issues we're faced with this year there will be a kind of opportunity to return back to a greater degree of international students? Do you see this as a temporary situation, or is it something that's more likely to be longer in the tooth?
We very much hope things will return to normal, as it were. But in that context, first of all, it's important to say that change this year represents a swing that is relative to a large group. So there'll still be a large number of international students here, the majority of whom are Chinese, and we would hope that will bounce back next year. Now, in the year just past, we actually had a very big jump, a real growth in the number of students coming from China, particularly for postgraduate study. So in a way, we might revert to something that was more similar to the year before. But generally, the trend in terms of applications for the university in general, actually, but very much including overseas, has been a real growth in interest over the last few years. The activity we've done to promote the university, and the university is progressing global rankings has really helped us to draw in more students from overseas. They account for about a third of that whole student community that I referred to. So we have really strong established links with China. Part of that is our partnership with a separate university, which we created with a partner in China called Xianjiaotong Liverpool University. And as many of you may know, a lot of our undergraduate students actually study 2 years there and 2 years in Liverpool. And that partnership has gone from strength to strength over the last decade since it was established. And that's not about to disappear. But that other growth around postgraduate taught students who apply directly, we recruit directly. The growth has been phenomenal. And actually, even in this year, the application growth was really, really strong. The issue is conversion, with people making a decision now based on the live situation with COVID. So the sooner things return to normal, the sooner we would expect those students to be coming back. And actually, there's still great potential for growth there, I think.
Okay, and you'll see there, Tim, on the chat and the queues there, that the Q&A, that obviously the businesses, do rely so heavily on the visitor economy, on the university. So I think hopefully some of those comments that you've made there will give them heart that the impact of the university, although a changing dynamic in terms of your student mix, will still play an increasingly an important part in helping the city recover. So that's good to see. Kellie, if I come over to yourself, and great to have you on the panel, particularly with you taking over as the chair of the Institute of Hospitality. So congratulations on that appointment. From your perspective, Kellie, it'd be good to get know a little bit about the institute and what it does, and also where the institute's views are in the midst of these challenges, these huge challenges for the hospitality sector.
Yeah, I mean, in its simplest terms, hello everybody. Thanks for those that have stuck with us and stayed on to kind of catch the end. The Institute is really quite simply the professional body for the hospitality sector. I've been in the hospitality sector for over 30 years, and for us it's about how we manage, promote professional conduct, professional development, personal development, and professionalise what we do. Really interestingly, pre-COVID, there was, the announcement came out, and we formed what was categorised as unskilled labour and unskilled workforce. And I think what's happened through COVID and post-COVID is we've actually seen firsthand the professionalism of the hospitality sector, and the way it's adapted, it's changed, it's been flexible, it's been innovative to kind of cope and manage through this time of complete chaos really within our sector. So really what my role at the Institute is, and the rest of the Institute, is to support people with their professional development. So make sure there's continuous learning, make sure we are evaluating and measuring the quality of the professionalism that we provide. We also now have seen the change from, this pop-up, stick a bar up and let's serve some beer, to suddenly having a lot more thought and care and that'll be my Amazon delivery today. There you go. Who else has had theirs? The problem when you've got a terrier. So we've seen this professionalism increase. We've seen it that there's a lot more of consideration to consider now in terms of opening food outlets, beer outlets, drinking establishments, and our role is to support people through that and hopefully prepare them for the next wave of what's going to come around the corner.
Yeah, and so just building on that, Kellie, I mean, I think obviously, the hospitality sector, I think people's understanding of the hospitality sector and the ecosystem that it represents, I would hope that at government level they've started to kind of recognise that it isn't a Cinderella industry, it's a really important and integral part of UK economy PLC. I mean, what if you're reflecting going forward, we obviously, talk about the new normal a lot, we probably talk about what changes and adaptations we'll have to make in this new normal. For the hospitality sector, I mean, what do you think are the kind of learnings from this, and what are the things you think that will stay with us now going forward and the businesses need to start thinking about now as we enter that new period?
It's really an interesting point. When the first announcement started coming out from government and hospitality was on the agenda, there was a kind of unilateral cheer from my industry, because we've always been pretty much a kind of subtext in terms of the UK economy, even though our contribution is vast. I think moving forward, I think we hope there's a seat at the table for hospitality, where invariably it's been an afterthought. So certainly from an industry perspective, we have hopefully more of a voice in shaping what that might look like. For the individuals concerned, you know, I come from an operational background. We have changed the way we do business in hospitality. And I'm really proud of the sector, how, you know, we have adapted. We've probably been as affected as any industry, probably more so than most. And the way that we've adapted and changed has really been a real credit to us. But I think moving forward, the new normal will be slightly different. You know, we look back when we used to talk about health and safety and the safety of others. It was always on everybody's agenda, but invariably it was the point you got to at the end of a meeting. That was a box tick. All of a sudden, it's at the top of everybody's agenda and remains so. You know, safety is paramount to us as a sector, but our guests and customers equally. I think also the impact in terms of the social mix and the social interaction with others. We feel we still have a responsibility, and that's not just about driving the economy, but, you know, we've talked about well-being, we've talked about the social impact and the social engagement with others. We have a role to play, and I think there has been a conscious shift in terms of how people feel responsible for the well-being of their locals, their guests and customers. So I think safety will always be paramount, and it will always be on the agenda. The consideration of well-being and emotional well-being will always be on the agenda. And I think this flexibility, you know, we know it's going to be tough, and it's going to be tough for some time. And an announcement today or tomorrow will have an impact on our sector tonight or tomorrow. So it's about being a lot more of a community spirit as well. What we've seen certainly from the Institute is this kind of collective spirit kind of come to the forefront. Community, fellowship, call it whatever you want, but it's been galvanizing for our industry, because we know some won't make it, some will not fare through. Big operators we've heard today will struggle, so the small little independents with limited cash flow are going to be deeply affected. So I think there's this community coming forward that will be hopefully stronger post-COVID.
Great, thanks very much, Kellie. Yeah, I think, you know, great to see. I mean, the Institute, I think, has always been at the heart of trying to increase the professionalism of our sector. And I think, hopefully, you know, through this process, you know, that across the country, you'll have seen the professionalism of the hospitality sector in dealing with the issues they've had to face and the way they've tackled those. And Tim, thanks very much for those insights on the university. It's as I say, such an important part of the economic fabric here and the social fabric of the city. And we wish you and the university every success going forward, and we'll be looking forward to working with you as much as possible. So, Bill, as per normal, I shall refer back to your good self to pick up any outstanding questions that we have to answer. And you're on mute. I love saying that to Bill.
Everyone's you would think after 6 months on Zoom, I would have learnt about that. So anyway, thanks for that. Thank you for the contribution of all of our panelists today. I think in the majority, most of the questions have been answered. The specific questions for Tim have been answered about the impact of the universities have. We know it's massive in our city, and we look forward to the students returning. However they can come back into this city, we were encouraged by the numbers that you've got coming back in across our great higher universities and higher education establishments. Andrew has made a point really about further business support for SMEs. Well, clearly, if we're listening to Matt this morning, Matt, as a realist, and you would want a realist as your Director of Public Health, has indicated that we will be needing to live with COVID going forward. We're not anticipating a vaccine for this virus anytime soon, despite what politicians in North America might say. And so it's learning to live with it. And because of doing that, we know that our businesses in this sector will need continuous support. So we are lobbying hard, both locally through our city region, but also nationally, that government needs to acknowledge that there is more support needed for SMEs. There's more support needed across the sector. Furlough may have ended for some businesses, and some businesses actually furlough is ending. Some businesses have not been impacted by COVID. Some businesses have had a very good COVID period and their turnovers have increased. But for the vast majority of businesses, and for those we've spoken to and heard from today, those businesses haven't even started to any recovery yet, and yet furlough is ending. So government needs to listen to that. We need to hear about how we can support businesses with business rate changes. So there is further support needed for business, and we will continue to lobby on behalf of that. And on a positive note, Peter Hooton, who has joined us and has been with us today, as we know, Peter has suggested that if anybody wants to know the benefit of wearing face coverings, then just look at what's happening in the Southern Hemisphere, where influenza and flu has been virtually eliminated during these last 6 months because people have been wearing face coverings. And the message that we need to get out is, if we want our businesses and we want the visitor economy in this city and the city to recover, then we need to follow the simple messages of washing hands, wearing face coverings. You know, it's not macho not to wear a face covering. It's absolutely selfish, and it's damaging our city if you don't wear a face covering where you should be doing. And that message will be reinforced over the days and weeks ahead. So thank you for being with us. Our next Visitor Economy panel is being held in a month's time. Hopefully in that month's time, we will have got to grips with this increase in COVID infections and are able to continue to ease up some of our lockdown and start moving to some form of normality. So, but thank you all for being with us today and bearing with us. I hope you felt it was right that we continued for it. Big thank you again to our panel.